we've been through the ups and downs, and we also understand that there's a human element to everything that we do. And yes, we want to win. Yes, we're going to push each other to be the best that we can be. The players are going to challenge us to be the best that we can be. But at the end of the day, we're all humans who love this game, who love to be around each other, who value shared experience. And when I think back on my career, it's not always about winning the championships and hanging the banners and getting the...
Only a loser says that. Sit with those words for a second, because statements like that are exactly how championship organizations slowly collapse before they ever truly begin. The greatest competitors in sports history were never motivated by shared experiences or comfortable locker room vibes. Kobe Bryant didn't wake up at 4 a.m. to train because he wanted everyone to feel included. Michael Jordan didn't destroy teammates mentally in practice because he cared about participation trophies. Larry Bird didn't walk into arenas thinking about life lessons and positive energy. They cared about one thing above everything else: winning championships, building dynasties, creating fear in opponents. That obsession is what separates legendary athletes from everybody else. And right now, heading into one of the most important seasons in Indiana Fever history, many fans feel like the organization is drifting in the complete opposite direction. Instead of hearing urgency, they hear excuses. Instead of hearing accountability, they hear patience. Instead of seeing a ruthless championship mentality surrounding Caitlin Clark, they see a franchise that still feels strangely comfortable with mediocrity. That is why the criticism surrounding head coach Stephanie White has exploded so aggressively over the past few months. Because there is a huge difference between losing games because the opponent was simply better on a particular night and losing games because the entire culture of your organization lacks intensity. In professional sports, culture matters more than people realize. The coach controls the emotional temperature of the entire building. Players look toward the sideline to understand what standards are acceptable. If the coach reacts to ugly losses with anger, urgency, and accountability, the players feel pressure to improve. But if the coach constantly softens criticism, searches for moral victories, and publicly avoids harsh truths, complacency slowly spreads through the roster like a virus. That is exactly why so many Fever fans are alarmed right now. They are not just frustrated about losing games. They are frustrated because they feel the organization is normalizing failure. Every time the team blows a lead, every time the defense collapses in the fourth quarter, every time the offense becomes stagnant and predictable, supporters expect direct accountability. Instead, they often hear phrases about growth, learning experiences, and positive takeaways. And to a fan base that believes they are watching a generational superstar enter her prime, those words sound terrifying. Because Caitlin Clark is not a normal athlete. She is not some developmental project that needs years before expectations become serious. She entered professional basketball already carrying historic pressure and historic attention. She broke scoring records at Iowa. She transformed women's basketball into a mainstream cultural event. Arenas sold out because of her presence alone. Television ratings exploded because people wanted to watch her compete. When a player changes an entire sport economically and culturally before even playing a full professional season, the expectations naturally become enormous. That is why fans become furious when they feel her talents are not being maximized. Look at Clark's mentality for a second. This is a player fueled almost entirely by competition. She talks trash. She celebrates deep three-pointers like knockout punches. She demands precision from teammates. She visibly hates mistakes, especially her own. That competitive edge is exactly what made millions of people fall in love with her game. She plays basketball with emotion, confidence, and controlled chaos. The energy she brings changes the atmosphere inside arenas immediately. Now compare that mentality with what many fans see from the Fever organization. They see a team that still struggles with defensive communication, transition coverage, offensive spacing, and late-game execution. More importantly, they see those same mistakes happening repeatedly without strong visible consequences. And eventually, supporters begin asking the obvious question: if the same problems continue appearing over and over again, what exactly is being fixed behind closed doors? That is where criticism of Stephanie White becomes especially intense. Many analysts and fans believe her offensive system does not properly fit Caitlin Clark's unique abilities. Clark's greatest strength is not simply shooting. It is the pressure she creates everywhere on the floor. The second she crosses half court, defenses panic. Opponents pick her up 30 feet from the basket. Double teams form instantly. Passing lanes appear because defenders become terrified of her range. Very few players in basketball history create that kind of gravity naturally. And yet, critics constantly point to possessions where Clark spends long stretches standing off ball, while the offense slows into traditional half-court actions. To many fans, that feels like tactical malpractice. Why would you force one of the most dangerous offensive creators in basketball into a passive role? Why build an offense that reduces chaos when chaos is exactly what makes Clark unstoppable? The comparison many supporters use is actually pretty simple. It is like buying the fastest race car in the world and then forcing the driver to obey residential speed limits. Technically, the car still functions, but you are deliberately suppressing the thing that makes it extraordinary. That frustration becomes even worse when the team loses badly while those same offensive issues remain visible. Fans watch games where spacing collapses, where shooters hesitate, where possessions become stagnant, and they naturally blame coaching. Especially because the expectations surrounding this franchise are no longer ordinary. The Fever are no longer some irrelevant rebuilding team hidden from national attention. Every game is now heavily scrutinized. Every press conference becomes headline material. Every tactical decision gets replayed across social media. And that spotlight creates pressure. When Clark appeared at practice wearing a noticeable leg sleeve after taking physical punishment on the court, fans immediately became nervous. They remember the injuries. They understand how valuable she is to the league itself. So, when concerns about her condition were casually dismissed publicly, many supporters interpreted it as another example of the organization avoiding transparency. Whether fair or unfair, distrust begins growing quickly once fans feel leadership is minimizing obvious concerns. At the same time, critics argue the Fever front office is becoming overly protective of the coaching staff instead of addressing deeper issues honestly. The organization wants stability. They want patience. They want long-term development, but fans increasingly believe this roster should already be competing at a much higher level considering the star power involved. And honestly, sports history supports that frustration. LeBron James did not win championships early in Cleveland because the organization failed to build the right culture around him. Eventually, he left for Miami because he understood greatness alone was not enough. Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors were talented before Steve Kerr arrived, but the system changed everything. Kerr modernized the offense, unlocked spacing, empowered movement, and transformed a good team into a dynasty. That is why Fever fans are nervous. They fear the organization already possesses the hardest thing to find in sports, a generational superstar, but may still fail because leadership refuses to evolve quickly enough. And modern athletes understand these situations better than ever before. Superstars know their value. They know how quickly careers move. They know championships are never guaranteed. If a player feels an organization is wasting their prime years, eventually frustration boils over. We have seen it happen repeatedly across professional sports. Now, imagine being Caitlin Clark. Imagine carrying the expectations of an entire league while getting double-teamed every possession. Imagine taking physical hits nightly while the offense around you still looks disorganized. Imagine feeling like every mistake becomes national news while the system itself remains inconsistent. Eventually, even the most patient competitors begin questioning everything around them. That is why body language matters so much. Fans have already started noticing moments where Clark looks visibly frustrated on the court, moments where she throws her hands up after broken spacing or missed assignments, moments where she appears emotionally exhausted after another offensive collapse. Those reactions are not meaningless. Competitive athletes communicate constantly through emotion. And this is what scares supporters the most. Complacency can slowly destroy greatness. If losing becomes normalized, if frustration turns into resignation, if urgency disappears, then even generational talent can become trapped inside dysfunction. Sports history is full of brilliant athletes who never fully reached their potential because the environment around them failed. Meanwhile, the pressure surrounding the Fever keeps growing larger every single week. Ticket sales, television ratings, media attention, social media engagement, everything surrounding Caitlin Clark now operates under a massive microscope. The organization cannot hide anymore. Every week performance becomes a national discussion. Every coaching decision gets analyzed endlessly online. Opening night against the Dallas Wings will immediately set the tone for the season. Millions of viewers will watch closely. They will analyze the offensive structure, They will study the rotations. They will monitor Clark's usage. If the same issues appear again, stagnant offense, poor defensive communication, passive sideline reactions, the criticism will explode instantly. Because fans are no longer asking politely for improvement, they are demanding urgency. They want Caitlin Clark fully unleashed. They want an offense designed around her creativity instead of limiting it. They want accountability after losses instead of soft public messaging. Most importantly, they want leadership that matches Clark's competitive intensity. And honestly, that demand makes sense. You do not draft a player capable of changing an entire sport just to operate like a slow rebuilding franchise. You do not bring in someone with Clark's star power and then act satisfied with moral victories. Generational players create championship expectations automatically. That does not mean every criticism is completely fair. Coaching in professional basketball is extremely difficult. Building chemistry takes time. Young rosters make mistakes. Development is not always linear. There are absolutely reasonable arguments for patience. But the reason emotions run so high is because fans genuinely believe they are witnessing a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And opportunities like this do not last forever. The fear is not simply about losing games in 2026. The fear is about wasting the beginning of something historic. Because Caitlin Clark has the ability to elevate women's basketball to heights nobody imagined possible a few years ago. She can change television deals, attendance numbers, sponsorships, media coverage, and global popularity. But even transformational athletes still need the right system around them. They need teammates who understand urgency. They need coaching staffs willing to adapt aggressively. They need organizations obsessed with maximizing greatness instead of protecting comfort. That is why this season feels so important for the Indiana Fever. This is bigger than ordinary basketball expectations now. The entire sports world is watching to see whether this franchise can rise to the moment or collapse under the pressure. And that is why debates surrounding Stephanie White have become so intense. Some fans believe she deserves patience and stability. Others believe the warning signs are already impossible to ignore. Some think the criticism has become unfairly emotional. Others believe the organization is sleepwalking through the most important era in franchise history. But one thing is undeniable. Expectations have permanently changed. The Fever are no longer rebuilding quietly in the background. They are now one of the most heavily watched teams in all of basketball because of Caitlin Clark's presence alone. Every mistake will be amplified. Every success will become headline news. Every loss will trigger questions about leadership, culture, and accountability. And if the organization truly wants to build a championship future around Clark, it cannot afford a passive mentality. Not now, not with this much talent, not with this much attention. Championship cultures demand obsession, urgency, adaptability, and accountability from everyone involved, players, coaches, and executives alike. Because history shows us something very clearly. Generational talent alone never guarantees greatness. Organizations still have to meet that greatness halfway.